some things happening. Two major things happened that NPMA, National Pest Management Association, has been working on. The first one was the passing of the revisions of the sulfuryl fluoride label with the food tolerances that we'll talk about in detail tonight. And the second one's actually going on right now. Gene Harrington is the one who's kind of spearheaded this drive out of Washington and contacting congressmen and senators and getting signatures. But there is as you saw today in the last presentation on the Food Modernization Act, we're getting a lot more inspections, and the FDA is overloaded and there's not enough money to go around in government. So what they're trying to do is balance out the money and who's going to pay for the fees. And what they have done is taken a look at the railroad industry, who may pay as much as $1,300 to get a rail car into the country through the X-ray machines and all the inspection that goes on. So imagine coming out of Canada, 100 rail cars, and in those rail cars they go through and they may pick 3 or 4 in there that they're going to inspect closely, but they're going to charge them for all 100 cars. So you have maybe $130,000 just to inspect that one train that's coming through. Well, I don't know about you, but the railroad industry and the lobby, I expect that's probably a lot bigger than the pest control lobby. So when it came time for this equity of fees, they threw up their hand and said, let's share this thing around. And what ended up happening, and not all of you are in the import business, but some of you are, but there's a $375 fee that's going to go on top of every imported container that comes in. So if you have 10 containers, it's $375 times 10. Now this went through about a 9-month process of debate, but boy, I'll tell you what, when I found out that the railroad industry was behind this, I thought to myself, we really don't have much of a chance. All right, let's switch a little bit to the Phosphine label. These are some, as of 15th of December, these are changes, or anticipated changes. The group, which is the task force for Phosphine, were able to get together. All of the registrants are now into the committee, into the inner circle, and willing to come up with the money for this re-registration process. Now, Phosphine just went through re-registration about 10 years ago, and I can tell you as soon as this re-registration is done, they're going to be back in the queue to go through another re-registration. All the fumigants will be going constantly through re-registration. And all these things are expensive, no question about it. Now, they found a lady by Susan Youngren, and she's an expert in modeling of fumigant gases. And they have been able to, EPA, accept her modeling rather than real-time data to be able to come up with the information that they are calling for. So it's the good news is we have an individual like this, and that individual is an expert. Now, I want to read this. I don't really like reading slides, but there are 4 different things here. Phosphine was noted as an alternative to methylbromide. Number 2, the Phosphine group agreed, or EPA agreed to accept and review data from the modeling of this lady. This could eliminate 7 to 10 data studies requested and March 15 completed. So this is going to speed up the process. When is this going to happen? I would say you're not going to see anything really letter writing time until about 2018. 19, we'll start seeing the EPA moving on this with the Federal Register, and then by sometime between 2019 and 2020, you'll see a new re-registration label for phosphine. Now, this is a marathon, guys. This isn't going to be something that's going to happen overnight, but we will have some type of input into this new label. And one of the things that Herb Yeaman, who is the president of Degish America, the maker of Phostoxin, has told us, the 3 top things that the EPA is looking for is buffer zones, and buffer zones. So we need to take a look at that and figure out how is that going to affect us, how's it going to affect our companies, how's it going to affect our customers. They've agreed that phosphine is phosphine, that's not magnesium, it's not solid phosphine, aluminum phosphide, and it's not gaseous phosphine. They have agreed to one phosphine term so that they aren't going out trying, each registrant has to take the responsibility. And they're going to extend the protocol deadlines until the results of this modeling from Dr. Youngren is completed, and then they'll have a review process sometime this year. EPA doesn't work on those kind of deadlines like March 15th. Let's talk a little bit about buffer zones. Imagine if this is one of your customers And imagine that you have a railroad that's running through the middle of it with rail cars. Imagine you have grain elevators, you have a mill, and fumigation could take place at multiple places in this facility. How is that going to affect a buffer zone set by the government? Now, what I've seen on the methyl bromide label is that they have set a standard for methyl bromide, EPA. The label hasn't been published to the customers, but it's been approved by EPA and it's sitting there ready to go through the process. And there is a calculator, and the calculator is on the website of EPA. And this particular calculator, you have 8 questions, you put in 8 answers, and it kicks out a number that your buffer zone is 400 feet, or 300 feet, or 200 feet, or 100 feet. So I expect that the methyl bromide label will be the kind of model for what EPA is looking for phosphine. I don't know why they would change. And then we will then have to then set different buffer zones with different risks, and then we would settle that. Now, the edge of this facility right here is more of a boundary line. A boundary line is different than a buffer zone. The boundary line is where the community can walk up to that building at that point, and then your TLV, your threshold limit value, would take in effect there. The buffer zone is where workers, us, workers of the company, workers of whomever that company contractor is going to be in and around that fumigation area. So buffer zone is something we'll need to find out more about, but I think the EPA has already explored that with their soil fumigations for methyl bromide.